It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we begin a Wednesday, Gary, what is going on?
We're so damn doomed.
It's over. Well, good night, folks. Drive safely.
Just a first thought, and we'll get into more of the minutia of it. But when I saw Biden's tariffs on Chinese EV cars,
yeah.
All right. Now, here's where we are in 2024. We're not putting tariffs on products. And by the way, you and I have talked about the that if you're going to punish another country, China is the one. I was reading an article today about this whole thing that, well, the Chinese EVs are superior to American EVs. It's like, no, they're not. That's why China's in court right now for stealing Tesla's battery technology.
Right.
And it's like, well, no, they're talking about the actual, the buttons on the controls, we believe, are better. And I saw a Response National Review. I think it was Luther Ray Abel wrote. He goes, yeah, because people are screaming for an iPad instead of the toggles.
Exactly.
But that's besides the point. In China, they can't make a profit on the EVs either.
Right.
It's government subsidized.
Right.
In the United States, we can't make a profit on EVs. Why? Because it's the central government that has decided that Americans need to buy a product that Americans don't want, Americans can't afford, and the companies, even with taxpayer subsidies, can't make a profit on. We've seen the numbers anywhere between, $68,000 and $300,000 loss on every electric vehicle that rolls off the assembly line.
Yeah, and
so,
if you're Fisker, it's 100% loss on every vehicle. Their stock is at 4 cents as we speak.
And so this is the genius. So the government, let's just lay this out. The government is the one that came up with the idea, because you would not have one OEM. You might have smaller companies making some EVs, but you would not have all the major OEMs making EVs if it wasn't for the government subsidies of it.
It might actually come down to literally Elon Musk in his garage. He wouldn't be a billionaire yet, but building his first prototype by himself.
I guess you could say you would have, small companies, boutique, that are making electric vehicles. But I don't even know if that would be the case if you didn't have it, because there's so many massive subsidies across the board. It's not just the federal subsidy that you get, or if you live in a liberal state, the state subsidy, for buying the vehicle. It's the subsidies all across the board inside the manufacturing process for EVs.
Well, and you're going to have to find buyers that are going to give you the money ahead of time, which has happened with a number of them. And then you take their money, and then they sit and wait sometimes for years on delivery of that vehicle. And the market is not going to, the market just, especially now, is not going to allow that.
So what we're doing is, let me just run through the scenario here. Let me organize it in my head here, because it's just so incredibly stupid. So you have the central government.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because we always like to talk about, what's communism?
Right.
Communism, controlling the means of production. Yeah. Well, okay, the central government says we want to sell EVs. We want Americans to buy EVs. Mm-hmm. So we're going to take billions and billions and billions of dollars of taxpayer money to give to companies, and through mandates force them to make EVs, mandates on gasoline and diesel vehicles. And so we're going to make them produce a product that they can't make a profit on, even with the subsidies, but we are going to protect those dying industries that have never made a profit by raising the tariffs on Chinese vehicles that would enter the United States 100%, which now either will mean fewer EVs being sold because the prices will go up.
Yeah.
Or the prices will go up. Well, that's really the only thing that's going to happen. You're going to have fewer vehicles selling because even if they raise the price a little bit. And so they didn't stop Chinese gasoline vehicles from coming in. And the only way that the car manufacturers in the United States are even surviving is because of gasoline vehicles, but you'll allow the Chinese gasoline vehicles in. And you're talking about where on so many of the material aspects of an electric vehicle, China makes it.
Yeah.
So China sells that to the United States. China can simply up the cost of those mining products that the United States has to have to build their electric vehicles that we lose money on. And so China can help raise the cost. And it's just the dumbest, it's the stupidest thing ever. But what it's supposed to do is hopefully slow the death of the electric vehicle in the United States.
You know, I was thinking about all this today, and I was thinking, you know, let's just get really stupid. If we're going to pay off everybody's college loans, then everybody gets a free EV. I mean, if you really wanted to save the planet, right, and you're a liberal, then, okay, everybody gets a free EV. And then I thought, well, here's the problem with that. Even for free, not everybody would want an EV. If you said free car of your choice tomorrow, free car of your choice within, I don't know, $75,000 range, $75,000 or below, what would the choices be? That's what it really comes down to. With all the government subsidies that have been poured into it and all this promises of cost savings, which, by the way, is a sham. I mean, if Letitia James finds out about this, she's not going to be happy at all. And all of these, you know, all these fake promises that have been made along the way. And now you look at what? You look at the market saturation of it. You look at the actual demand of where it is right now after that market saturation. And what you have left standing is companies losing tons of money. Even Tesla is losing money. They're not making the money that they once did. And that peak, by the way, is relatively short-lived. Imagine if Henry Ford, you know, rolling it out and all of a sudden he gets to the point of mass production and everything else, and then we just went, nah. It'd have been over very quickly. The demand has to be there, and the demand is not there.
Well, and then they say, well, we're doing it to protect American jobs. Well, you're killing American jobs by forcing automobile companies to build a product that they can't make a profit on, even with the taxpayers kicking in hundreds of billions of dollars. And so you're saying we want to protect the American workers' jobs that we're killing. I mean, everything. It's the same thing as the story when I woke up. Biden now saying we're going to ship 1 billion more.
Yeah,
1 billion more. This is on top of what Congress has approved.
Yeah.
We're going to send even 1 billion more arms to Israel, and it's just like. People sit there and go, where the hell does he stand on? He's trying to cover both sides of an issue, and he's not succeeding on anything. But his behavior that we know on many of these things is what's important. But he's trying to save it now because do you think that the $1 billion that they said in additional weaponry, tank shells, tank shells. Well, yeah, if you don't want to have urban warfare that kills civilians,
right?
Let's give them more tank shells.
Right.
I mean, it's everything that they do. And the only reason he's doing it is because I believe the New York Times Siena poll has scared the hell out of them.
I think they panicked.
And they went, oh, my God, all right, what do we have to do? Okay, let's come up and say, not only, let's tell everybody we're going to ship not even what Congress approved, but we're going to go to Congress to ship more weapons to Israel.
It makes me wonder if they walk it back from what Blinken said on Sunday and say, well, you didn't get the entire quote from the Secretary of State. He said, get out of Gaza because he was telling Israel to get out of Gaza. He was warning them to get out of the way because we're going to bomb Gaza. I mean, it was such when I saw that $1 billion and and the Wall Street Journal had the breakdown of it. What's going to be spent on what. What it was clear panic. They're scrambling, and they should. But the New York Times seeing a poll is indicative of a number of things here. It isn't just the one issue. Now, if Biden announces tomorrow that they're going to spend $100 billion on building a wall on the southern border, which at this point you might need to do if you're going to salvage anything for your party.
Well, understand, though, Trump wanted $25 billion, but inflation has made it now $100 billion.
Yeah,
we need to make sure that we cover that.
Yeah, the Biden cost is $100 billion. But that's the thing is that it's not just the one thing, and it's also too little, too late. It isn't. The overcorrection is the admission that you're wrong. And that's a problem. And when you admit you're wrong, you weren't grappling with anything. Your secretary of state on Sunday made it very clear. That was a gauntlet if I've ever seen one. Get out of Gaza. Boom. A New York Times seeing a poll drops, and they're scrambling. They're panicking.
Well, we knew it on Monday when you had Jake Sullivan and out there, and he wasn't saying the same thing
right.
As Blinken was the day before. So what they said was, look, get the hell out of town and go play guitar somewhere to Blinken.
Yeah, exactly.
Go play some horrible Neil Young song.
Yeah, go to a place where no one can hear you playing. Go make sure you're far enough away so that your sub-mediocre guitar skills come through.
Hey, my. The Biden administration must go away.
Yeah, and by the way, what does Blinken know about free world? Keep on rocking in the free world. What the hell are you talking about, Jack?
Oh my God!
Your commander-in-chief doesn't want a free world?
My God! I mean, it's just what? But the 100%, and then Trump came out and goes 200% tariffs.
Yeah,
I'll do. It's like
it's like, right.
Okay, let's.
Yeah,
but. As you know now, Trump, though, is on the side now of getting rid of the EVs.
Mm-hmm.
The Lordstown plant. Remember when he was president? Well, this is the kind of EV that we want. No, it isn't.
Well, it isn't,
and he's not saying that anymore,
which
is good.
I think there are a number of things. I mean, you look at the domestic producers. I mean, it's really just overall, it's just the implosion of the EV market, and this isn't, a slowdown. This isn't the consumer changing their opinion on EVs. I mean, think about it. Gas prices are going up. This does happen. When gas prices go up, then fewer large vehicles are bought. People tend to buy the more gas saver vehicle, right? That we've watched that happen, I don't know how many times over the years. So gas prices are going up again. They expect it to go even further up over the summer. And EV sales are still dropping. That tells you a lot about what's going on. Because it's not about the gas savings at all. It's about the concern over the batteries. It's about the concern of operating them. It's about the concern of going through tires at a much faster rate. And the cost of ownership overall is way too great. And people just don't have the patience for it. They just don't.
Well, and the cost of ownership, if you were actually paying the full freight,
yeah,
you wouldn't be selling any.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you might be selling a few to billionaires, but
right,
no, they're going to go
park out in front of their house while they get their SUV in the back, warmed up to actually go somewhere. I mean, that's what it's all about. Letterman, comedians in cars getting coffee. He's driving his hot rod, which was, I think, a gift from Steve McQueen or something back in the day. And then the next thing, he's driving his Nissan Leaf, and Seinfeld was like, oh, come on. This is just one of your cars. It's a tiny car. It's not your primary vehicle. It was laughable. You're doing it for some kind of virtue signaling. And far too many, not everybody, far too many people are doing that. The tech geeks love the technology. It's pretty cool technology. Is it practical as a vehicle? Not yet, no.
Yeah, so that was one. When I saw that yesterday, I just burst out. 100% tariffs on EVs. We're going to protect the American worker. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's a dying industry
Right.
that only exists because of taxpayer dollars, and the automobile companies have lost employees because it takes fewer to produce it, and those jobs aren't going to be there because people don't want to buy electric vehicles.
Right.
They're completely, totally clueless.
No, they are. They are. It's insane. They have no grasp of reality, and I think right now they're just desperate to throw anything out. Who knows what else comes from the Biden administration between now and November?
866-90-RED-EYE.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Logging miles during the hot summer months can put a serious strain on you and your truck's health. Did you know pollutants and allergens in the air outside can enter your cab through the HVAC system without you even cracking a window? That's why it's important to check those cabin air filters. Inhaling dirty and polluted air can cause distress if you suffer from allergies or a respiratory illness. Not to mention the distraction dirty cabin air filters can cause by blocking proper airflow to your AC system when you need it most.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Whoa. The producer price index, wholesale inflation numbers came out yesterday. Not good.
No, not good at all. The median forecast for PPI, wholesale inflation, was at 0.2, which would have doubled what the previous month did, and it came in at 0.5. So a big miss there. Year over year, it was at 2.2, up from the previous month of 1.8. And then the core PPI, the median forecast, came in at 0.2, and the actual came in at 0.4.
They're not even close on the forecast, are they?
I don't know where all this optimism is coming from that balances out the median forecast. That brings it in where it brings it in. And if you look at the inflation numbers that will come out later this morning here in about 7 hours or so, for these would be the April inflation numbers, the median forecast isn't promising. The month over month for CPI, the median forecast is at a 0.4, up from 0.2 the previous month. So if the median forecast is 0.4 and the miss is what it was for the wholesale inflation, then this could be a really, really bad deal. I have every reason to believe, just based on what's happened so far this year, what happened in the first quarter, that inflation it's nowhere close to being tamed, and I guess we'll see in about 7 hours.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Before we get back to a couple more comments on in inflation, I have to bring this up because you and I have talked about this for months now. We said what the Republicans need to do is not just promote where they stand on the issues compared to Democrats, but they need to come out with an ad that says, look, Joe Biden and the Democrats can't and won't solve the problems because they created the problems, and then go through everything. So I'm just scanning different things, and I get to, this is on the RNC Research X site, and it's from the Trump War Room. All right? And it says, crooked Joe Biden did this. Joe Biden and the Democrats created the border crisis. And then have voted against hiring more border agents, refused to fund the border wall, aided sanctuary cities, sent stimulus checks to illegal immigrants, ended Remain in Mexico policy, refused to deport felons. All right. They're getting closer to what we want.
It's a start.
It's a start.
Keep it going.
So I just wanted to mention that. You know, just on the inflation, you know, Powell yesterday, I'm just shaking my head going, they don't know what to do.
No,
you know,
no.
they can't say they're going to raise rates again. And I don't know what the inflation number is going to be today, but even if the inflation number does not reflect the wholesale number, my fear is that the wholesale number was so great and so far out of the median forecast that there will be a delaying effect, as there normally is. What do they call it? Not delaying effect. What word am I trying to use here? That if you have the wholesale prices, it may
that it's a leading indicator and not a current indicator.
Right. It's that you're because it comes the wholesale comes before the retail, and therefore you might not see that number till next month. But it was so out of whack and so high because the PPI at 0.5, you know, you're talking 6% inflation.
Well, and even
if you extrapolate that out over a year,
and even if you set the core inflation aside, look at the trend for the first quarter on inflation. And I don't see anything that turns that around. Show me what turns that around. And when people have pulled back on spending, that's one indication, because you're seeing that. We know that. And April was a bad month for that. So that's an indication that a number of things that they're getting to the end of their savings. They have tapped out all of their credit lines, and things are too expensive. They're still underwater. This trend is going to continue, I believe, at least for the rest of this year. I saw another analyst on Monday who said he believes it will be probably 2026 before we see inflation get back close to the target.
And my first thought when I saw it yesterday, my first thought was stagflation, because we saw the first quarter GDP numbers. And last week, when new hiring came out, that was a lot less than they expected. And claims were up.
Right.
And I'm looking at this overall and saying, all right, you know, you get a wholesale number, you might not see it in the current inflation that comes out tomorrow, the CPI, but you might see it in July, August, September. That's when that starts hitting. But it was so off, Eric. That was the thing. It was so far off. You're talking about being, 100% off.
Yeah. Well,
from your what the forecast was, if it was 0.2 and it's 0.5, you're way off.
That's really what I took from the numbers today in terms of how it might reflect on the CPI, is how bad they've been on the median forecast. And if your median forecast on CPI right now, you look at, all right, so core CPI year over year. Previous month was 3.8, 3.6 on the median forecast. That's the median forecast. If it comes in at 3.6, if it's on point on the median forecast, that's not good. You have the core CPI month over month, 0.4. The median forecast is for 0.2. We'll see where it lands. CPI year over year, 3.5. The median forecast is at 3.4. Again, if it comes in spot on the median forecast, that's not good. And they haven't been good on their median forecasts. So we'll see. We'll see where it comes in. This is not, I don't believe this is going to be remedied because it goes back to what I've been saying all along. The Fed's not serious about inflation. They weren't serious enough. Their ultimate target rate wasn't high enough.
And my fear, because I remember the 70s inflation that really lasted for a decade, is even when they throw out and say, well, in 2026, well, I don't know. If you're not serious on inflation now, will the Fed be serious on inflation next year or the year after that? And the thing that gets to me, that always sits in the back of my mind, is what you have now that you did not have in the 70s is the massive debt of the federal government, and not only the massive debt, but the massive increase in interest payments that could reach $900 billion to $1 trillion in interest cost that just a couple of years ago was hanging around $300 billion. Well, that continues the spending cycle of doom, because you have to, if you've got to pay that interest no matter what. So what does the government do? They still keep funding what the budget is. There are no cuts, and they just keep borrowing more.
Right. Yeah.
Because the borrowing, eventually needs the approval of Congress, but they pass it every time. They're not going to let the default happen. And so the spending continues. They're not going to stop. They're not going to sit there and say, okay, since we were spending a few years ago $300 billion, and now we're spending $1 trillion, that's just on interest, that's $700 billion. We need to cut $700 billion from the budget.
Right.
That's not going to happen. So what do? They spend that $700 billion. They're still going to spend it because Congress has allocated it, and that all goes to more debt, which then continues that financial cycle of doom. I will tell you this. I've seen more articles over the last month or so now talking about the seriousness of the debt that we have and the interest portion of it, because that's driving up inflation. And you did not have that in the 70s, not close to what we have right now. And that's what worries me, is nobody has taken that into account. And I really haven't seen, I've seen articles stating that the debt and the interest on the debt, again, drives inflation because it drives, again, more spending and then more debt service on that particular spending. I haven't seen anybody with an analysis of how much, it would be if we didn't have that. What might inflation be now? Yeah.
No, I wonder about a number of things here too. Looking at the business inventories as a part of the report that will come out, different report at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern. And last month, it was at a 0.4, and it is at the median forecast is 0.0 or negative 0.1, negative 0.1. So there was an article about a week ago that said that business inventory, some some businesses are increasing their inventories. But the problem, the asterisk on that, is that if you believe you need to build a couple of months inventory because the one business owner said it's the political climate and just building out a couple of months inventory gives him a bit of a buffer. The problem with it is it's borrowed money at higher interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're doing that, again, you're betting that inventory is going to be, that the consumer is still going to be buying at the same rate. And, depending on how much inventory you build, of course. And so all of this will, give us an indicator as to where industry is, where the consumer is. And the fact of the matter is there's nothing that points to an uptick in consumer behavior, in consumer demand, in getting out there and spending more money. Everything points to quite the opposite. You probably saw the stories that played out yesterday in a big way. I got an alert on an auction related to the closing of one of the Red Lobster locations in Oklahoma. They're auctioning the entire content of the restaurant in one lot.
Mm-hmm.
And a number of their locations were shuttered pretty quickly. Anecdotally, I think I mentioned it on the air, but over the past couple of years, gone in on like Saturday afternoons, and it was just desolate. There were not many people there. And I thought, wow, this isn't good. What's going on? It is an older brand. They've gone through ownership. It's no longer part of Darden. Years ago, investment groups came in, and then they wanted to change the business model according to employees there. They said, well, they were asking fewer people to take on more work. Well, that's kind of been across the board, I think, especially in the restaurant industry and especially since COVID. But you look at that also as one of the indicators of that it could have been the tipping point. I believe it looked like Red Lobster was on their way to bankruptcy anyway. But if the tipping point, again, if it was helped along by what's going on with spending in restaurants is down. There was an article in one of the financial publications about a month ago that talked about how even at fast food, people are ordering differently.
33% higher fast food prices from pre-COVID.
Right. And so when you order differently, you go in and you buy, a single item instead of the meal. And this is the way it's kind of paired out. You bring a coffee from home instead of getting, your coffee at the drive-thru, and you only get the sandwich, you don't get the meal. The change in the consumer habit is what you see in inflation. There's only so much money that you have in your budget for things like that, and people are eating at home more. And so the restaurant industry and a lot of industry right now is looking at pulling back. And if we could get another indicator here later this morning that shows the kind of stagflation that was way too prevalent back in the 70s. And this, I feel, could be a lot worse.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Coming up following the top of the hour, latest on the Trump trial. You can see the GOP is uniting now. As you saw yesterday, Mike Johnson there. Did you see Liz Cheney's tweet?
Yeah.
We'll have to,
seriously.
We'll have to talk about that coming up here in a little bit. One more thing on inflation here. The one thing I wonder, a couple of articles actually that I saw yesterday about the debt and getting to the point of saying, we're getting to the point of $1 trillion. There was a point last year, I don't know where we are right now, where it was $1 trillion in new debt every 100 days.
Yeah, right.
And, you look at that kind of debt that's being created, and you're like, well, who buys the debt? And if you're going to keep increasing that debt, you're going to need people to buy that debt, which means the chance of the interest rates going down on Treasury bills and Treasury bonds are less and less and less.
Mm-hmm.
Does the Fed get back into buying their own debt again in order to solve that problem, which then increases inflation again?
Right.
That's the problem.
There's
You've got
no
this
way out
cycle
of
of
it.
inflation doom.
There's no way out of it that doesn't go through pain if you want a true remedy.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And let me see, it was 24 years ago today that I started at our flagship station, WBAP. I came to Texas.
Wow. All right.
So there you go.
Let's see, 24 years ago, and that was the year 2000. We were, as a nation, just starting to explore space. I may be off a few years on that.
Sputnik had just gone up.
A new kind of currency called Bitcoin had just become all the craze. Wait, I could be a few years off on that one,
you're
too.
a few years off on that, yeah.
There was a man in his garage selling books saying, one day I'll be the richest man in the world.
No, I tell you what was at that time.
What?
Napster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I remember that my first year, and then again the election of 2000, because I joined the campaign coverage.
Yeah.
When I got hired, we were in the midst of the 2000 election.
Okay. All right.
So
This weekend will be my overall 28th anniversary with the company, with this, because in May of '96, I started doing a weekend show.
oh, okay.
And at the network over at the old building where we came from.
The nice
And
building.
The nice building, the cool building. It was a really posh building. It was really nice. And, they needed to get somebody in because they were going to be shorthanded on the upcoming Memorial Day weekend. And then 6 months later, started at our flagship full-time. So crazy how time just goes.
Well, I always look back that I was given advice by the old program director of WBAP back, and he was program director, I think, back in 1980. And when I left Buffalo in 97, I was working as a talk show host in Buffalo, went to Portland, Oregon, to our great affiliate KXL. And so when it came to this offer coming in 2000, or the fact that they were interested, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in talk radio again.
Right.
I got a message from the guy who took over my show when I left Buffalo in 97, Sandy Beach, who took over my show back then and retired a couple of years ago from radio. But he told me, what? WBAP is interested in you? You go. Said you'll be a blankety blank if you don't. And he said if you get hired there, you'll never have to look for a job again.
Right. Yeah.
Here I am. I can't even retire.
Well, it's funny because I thought about it. When Howard Schultz posted that thing, the former CEO of Starbucks, about we should get back to, or the company should get back to selling coffee and focusing on the product.
Mm-hmm.
Something we told him years ago. He did it on LinkedIn, and I thought, man, is Howard Schultz that desperate for a job? He's posting things on LinkedIn.
Well, thanks to LinkedIn that a few days ago reminded me that it was 24 years.
Yeah.
Because LinkedIn is, that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this July 15th
mm-hmm.
will be 19 years for you and me being together.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
Wow.
It's insane. Yeah. Yeah, I thought about it. With the Howard Schultz thing, I thought, and I said, I don't want to. I don't plan to be. I don't know what, after all these years, after 28 years, looking for a job looks like. I really don't.
Well, you don't need to make a paper resume.
No. Well, I didn't in 96, both with the weekend job and then with the job, this full-time job. I made a phone call, and I never submitted anything else.
Well, that was
I showed up.
Yeah, the same here. But I mean, if you had applied for jobs back then, you needed a paper resume.
Right.
You weren't sending it by
last
email, and you were sending out either a cassette tape of your show or a CD of your show.
The last time I did that would have been 91. When I came to Dallas, some stuff that I had already done had already been submitted for me to this rock station that I worked at for a couple of years, a friend of mine, and they called me. So it's been a very fortunate set of events. I don't even know. I mean, I can fill out my resume. I don't. It's just, it would feel so foreign to me because, like, what has changed about what you put in the resume, do you write it differently? Do you format it differently? I don't even know because, like, even my wife recruiters have come to her in her industry. That's now common. You don't really submit anything. It would be rare after a recruiter comes to you and there's interest in you for you to have to submit anything.
Well, yeah, that's after you have an established career. But when you don't have an established career, you do have to go through the process.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, she's at that point where that's what she has.
Right.
And so I don't even know anybody that's submitted a resume. I guess my son, for his job that he has now, a couple of years ago, I guess they went through that process.
Yeah, I know a ton of younger people are constantly, emailing and doing things like that.
That's foreign to me.
And networking.
So far removed.
Yeah, well, I would know how to apply for a job, but it'd be really interesting. And the thing is, though, I'm at the stage of my life where I don't have to embellish anything.
Mm-hmm.
The resumes where you'd sit there and say, oh, no, there's a 2-month gap between my jobs.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me move one like 2 weeks further that will get me to the end of the month and move the other one there. So it's only a month that I was off of work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, remember that? Now it's like people, I haven't worked in 5 years. Could you give me $250K a year plus 10 weeks vacations?
Yeah.
Vacation.
Yeah. I've never been unemployed. I've always been full-time employed since I started this job. That was a problem between the ages of 16 and 18. Once I started this job, I've been fortunate enough to be full-time employed, and that's
you weren't a machinist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
in the late 70s, early 80s, as I was, because you did get laid off back then.
Yeah,
if you were in industry, it was
the
it
one
was a
time I
common
got
thing.
laid off in radio, December 30th, 1994. Before noon, I had a full-time job. Actually, I had a full-time job. I was working 2 full-time jobs when it happened. So I had a full-time job, and then another radio station called me and said, "Hey, we want you on board. We heard what's going on, and we want you on board." And I started immediately, and then 3 months later, I was down here. And I think, though, it comes from, that mindset of not just back then staying employed and keeping a paycheck, but I had to stay busy. I was afraid. I was afraid of at some point, okay, now I'm going to have to choose a real career. and
the panic set in.
Yeah. Well, and I did. I mean, I looked into law enforcement right before I came here and tested and did pretty well. And ultimately, the discussion that I had with my family, and then my dad, a career military law enforcement, and taught law enforcement. And then the decision for myself was that I didn't fully trust my hearing. I've had damaged hearing since I was 13. And even with hearing aids, it's not remedied to the point that I would trust it, because my fear would be if I missed something on the radio, if I missed something, if someone said something to me in a situation, it would put lives at risk, and I wasn't willing to do that. And thank God I landed a gig, in radio that just became a lot more rewarding than where I thought it was headed. I wanted to do more. I wanted to have more of an interaction with an audience, and that's exactly what we do.
Well, I'll tell you this. When I started with you on July 15th, 2005, I never thought I'd be working with you.
Yeah.
And on and I will be working with you on July 15th, 2024.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be working with you 19 years later.
Well, someone asked me at WBAP when I started, because the former host of the old show, Bill Mack, that started the all-night show in 1969 on WBAP, and we worked together for several years. When he retired and left WBAP, someone asked me, well, he was here for a total of 32 years. He did leave for several years in the 80s and came back, and they asked me on the air, do you see yourself being here for 32 years? And I said, no. I couldn't even contain myself. The no just flew out of my mouth. No. I'm not going to do overnights for 32 years. And fell in love. I was already pretty much in love with it at that point, but each and every day and each and every new experience became greater. So in terms of congruent years, now I guess I hold the most years, and which is, you get 0 for doing that, by the way. You get nothing. You get, there's not even a plaque. It's nothing.
Well, what are you, at 28?
I'll be at 28 in December. Yeah.
Okay.
So overall, Bill was at 32, but he left for several years in the 80s and came back. So.
Well, then it's not a total of 32.
Yeah. Right. That's what I mean. I have more congruent years. So
I just said that to get on your nerves, because we've been together, almost 19 years. I need to get on your nerves more, because that's what couples do.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not a couple. And don't ever say that again. In Florida, that's against the law. You can't even say that. We might even have a fine coming through one of our stations. Governor DeSantis' office. Send those guys an invoice for a fine. It's not that it's against the law. It's just weird.
But I'd say it's really cool though when I look back, because my goal was to stay a year and get out and just say, okay, I've got national experience. It'll help me get a better local job. That's what I thought. And you and I both recognized probably a week in where we said, do we have chemistry?
Yeah.
It really feels like we do. It isn't really work.
Yeah.
And if you have the wrong co-host, it's torture.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
If you have the right person that has the same philosophy as you, which is, you don't care. There is no jealousy.
The entire effort has to be selfless.
Right. It has to be, and all you care about is, did it work? At the end of a segment, did it work? Did we accomplish what we wanted to? Doesn't matter whether you got the best joke or I got the best joke. All that matters is, and I'll say it because, and people may say, yeah, but it's not because that's more comedy related. But did the bit work? Did the segment work?
Yeah. Did the presentation overall work? Yeah. So
and when you believe that, and that's somebody who's in the business for the process of it, and you're in I've been working with you for such a long time. I know that you love the process, and I love the process. Yeah. Everything else, the little bit of celebrity, I could care less about. I got into radio to do radio. I like doing radio. I like the process of because there's really very few things in the broadcasting media where you get to be producer, director, and host.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen in TV at all.
Right.
You've got people all over the place, producers, directors, whatever, writers. And I didn't want that.
No.
And
no. I didn't, and you and I have been invited to be on at times very popular TV shows, and that's always great and flattering. The problem with that presentation is it's so limited, you don't get everything in. And at the end of it all, it's, the idea is I'm a radio guy. I want all of that time to, and by the way, too, different, if we were on at a different day part, we would have a lot of other business to take care of.
Oh, yeah.
And we wouldn't be able to break down the ideas. So I feel pretty fortunate to be where I am. I love doing this because it allows that opportunity. I don't know if I'd have the same passion. I don't have the passion for TV. So, it's just not even guesting on TV. I don't have any interest in that.
But after realizing it's 24 years here in Texas, this time, I realize I'm old.
Yeah.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Smart owner-operators make every single week as profitable as possible. One trip is not enough time to be considered profitable or unprofitable, and an entire month may be too much time to manage. 1 week is the right amount of time to deal with efficiently. To do so, look at the advantages and disadvantages of every day of the week. Match trip length to the optimum day of the week. Plan to deliver on the day you have the best opportunity of getting a load. Your personal weekly plan will vary depending on the weekly delivery flow cycle of your region, typical length of haul, personal requirements, and other factors. What's important is to have a specific weekly plan that helps you be successful. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, Republican Party uniting around Trump. We'll get to that coming up, plus the latest on Cohen's testimony. And when it ends, the cross-examination, what is the judge going to do? Because the defense is going to ask for a direct verdict and say they haven't made the case. And that's one of the amazing things yesterday from people like Jonathan Turley and others who said, wow, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
No case has been made. And he actually goes through it. We'll hear some of that coming up.
About to trigger somebody right now. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley on Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. All right, let's go to the Trump trial yesterday. This is Jonathan Turley on the analysis of the cross-examination of Cohen yesterday. Here we go.
No, not at all. And indeed, one of the most impressive things about the last 2 days is it does appear that Cohen may have committed perjury again. You know, his explanations on various points do not strike some of us as true. You know, when he said that he surreptitiously taped the president, which just blasts away ethical obligations, he said he was doing that really to help Trump and to keep David Pecker honest. It makes no sense. That is, it's just no one can get their head around that. But that was just one of a number of moments where you really have to be impressed with this guy who really has shown throughout his life that he'll only tell the truth if he has no alternative. Now, what I think was the most amazing thing today is that the prosecutors said that they will close their case, they'll rest their case after Cohen's testimony is done. There's only one problem. Nobody has established the elements of any crime. The government has not even stated or explained why listing these payments as legal expenses is not correct. They haven't put on any material evidence to support those elements. Most judges would be insulted for prosecutors to say, well, that's a wrap, without ever making the basis for a case. So the judge is going to have this motion for a directed verdict. And I think any judge in good faith would grant that motion. If he sends this to the jury, he is sending a case to a jury where no crime has been stated and even core factual issues remain very much in doubt.
Okay, there, yeah. So, sorry, I clicked it. I clicked it by accident, so I lost the audio cut. But he got out the basis of what we wanted to bring out. Nothing has changed since the very beginning.
No, and there isn't even an attempt here by the prosecution to establish a crime. Bragg has been lying to the jury. The judge is also lying to the jury by letting Bragg get away with it. He's allowing this to continue. The only play by defense is to ask for that direct verdict. You need to tell us what we're defending.
And just so people understand, this is where the defense doesn't even put on a case.
Right.
They've cross-examined the prosecution witness, but they don't bring their case. They're saying, why would we bring our case? You haven't identified the crime. The interesting thing that Turley brought up, that when talking about the statute of limitations expired misdemeanor, that they don't even say that him putting legal fees is a crime and why it's a crime.
Right. Yeah. No, they haven't established anything here. They haven't established any criminal element at all.
And I think that's the shock. The shock for anybody in the legal profession is, my God, this is just mind-boggling. That no law has been brought into it. A rogue prosecutor brings a case, and the judge allows it to even get this far.
Right.
And we had said early on, unless there's something else going on here, this judge is completely out of line and ought to be sanctioned, or something should happen to this judge. Now, if he comes out and says, sorry, you haven't brought your case and it ends, well, then he's going to be okay.
Well, he would be okay in that he could make the claim, or someone could make the claim, that he was giving Bragg enough line to undo himself. Right. And that could be the case here, but still it shouldn't be allowed because you're wasting taxpayer money. You're disrupting the election cycle by not allowing Trump to campaign, by requiring him to be there.
Well, that didn't work out well, did it?
Well, it's turned just the opposite. In fact, I'm wondering if the defense team, I thought about this the other day, if the defense team is like, no, prosecution, take your time. Before you rest your case, just take your time, make sure you're done. Because as it goes on further and further and further, and now we see members of the GOP showing up and defending. There's two things here. They wouldn't be there if the GOP thought, if the Speaker of the House, think about this, the Speaker of the House showed up. The Speaker of the House showed up. That's not a small thing. If you're that judge, if you're Bragg, you don't care about it, and the judge may not care about it. Or the judge may be thinking, my gosh, exactly what we're thinking. The GOP, if they thought there was any rust that would taint them at all from this, they would never show up the way they've done in recent days. And they're there in full force, and you see it over and over again. J.D. Vance, you see Byron Donalds was there. Ramaswamy was there talking yesterday. The Speaker of the House is there. All of this support on site for Trump is a big, 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 big deal. It tells you that the GOP has great confidence. They're not trying to throw this case. They already know this case is nothing but a winner for the GOP. And they see the New York Times Siena poll. You see a number of things that are going on right now that are affecting the polls, and this is one of them. We have been saying Alvin Bragg is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the Trump campaign.
I need to find. I'm not sure what he's referring to. It looks like in general, but this is Byron York wrote this on Twitter. Was listening to MSNBC Trump trial coverage before Cohen cross-examination even began. Anchors and experts were confused about the other crime. Prosecution finished without specifying it. Were they going to use state law, federal law? Was the jury supposed to figure it out by themselves? That's the whole point. You're going to send, if the judge sends this, what type of jury instructions do you give?
That's what I've been asking
for days. If there is no crime,
right?
If you haven't laid out why this is a crime, you simply said a crime has been committed. Okay, what is it? Well, we're not going to tell you. Send it to the jury so they can say guilty or not guilty on something that we haven't specified as a crime. I've never seen this ever. I've never seen a case like this ever.
Because let's say the instructions for the jury are very vague and they don't include, here is the statute, see if what the prosecution brought or alleges here is up to that statute. Does it rise to that statute of criminal behavior? That's your job to find that out, yes or no, guilty or not. Even if he doesn't, if he goes down this vague, well, all right, up to you guys, guilty, not guilty, and he sends them, well, then at least one person on the jury is going to have to say, what does the law actually say? Where's the statute? You have to give the jury directions. You give them directions as a judge. How are you going to direct them without applying the statute here? What statute?
Then I'm reading here, Andrew McCarthy. What must the jury be thinking about why Trump is on trial? I wonder what the Manhattan jury must be thinking about all the resources the elected Democrat district attorney is devoting to it. The majority of crime in New York goes unreported. Of that which is reported, the number of crime cases that are solved, what police call the clearance rate, is alarmingly low. This is especially the case in Manhattan. Last week, the Manhattan Institute's Tim Rosenberger noted in City Journal that less than 3 in 10 cases, 29.8%, are cleared. In New York City in 2022, the last year for which there were complete annual stats, there were over 156,000 arrests. A little less than half of them, 72,000, were felony arrests, nearly 29,000 categorized as violent felonies. All of these arrests resulted in less than 12,000 indictments. So you had 156,000 arrests. Of all the arrests, 12,000 indictments. More disturbing still is the bottom line. Those 156,000 arrests yielded a grand total of 4,375 prison sentences. Sentences of incarceration were imposed in less than 3% of arrest crimes. As you think about it, bear in mind that many attacks that normal people would consider violent are deemed nonviolent in New York if no serious injuries result. Consequently, many forcible attacks that result in arrest are charged by prosecutors as misdemeanor assaults. The Manhattan Institute's Hannah Myers points out on X that many misdemeanor assault cases are disposed by simply being dismissed. Last year, the dismissal rate in New York City was 66%, having surged from 45% a decade ago. Myers further reports that repeat offenders is at its highest level in 7 years, a fact acknowledged by NYPD Crime Control Strategies Chief Michael Lepetri, correcting false claims of improvement by public advocate and gubernatorial hopeful Jermaine Williams, one of the city's many progressive champions of criminal justice reform. The extraordinary amount of crime is committed by repeat offenders who are on the streets rather than behind bars because of Democratic-dominated New York hostility to prosecution and imprisonment. Yet D.A. Bragg seems to have a bottomless resource, prosecutors, investigators, funding to throw at a 7-year-old business records allegation against the Democrats' principal political rival, normally a misdemeanor that would not even be prosecuted in a city whose resources are too strapped to address major crime adequately, but that Bragg has inflated into a 34-count felony indictment on which his proof appears woefully inadequate. What must the jurors be thinking? Probably whether they'll be safe on the streets and the subway as they make their way home from court. Wow. Interesting yesterday.
Yeah.
But, again, they can't even identify the crime. It really is.
No.
Have you ever seen anything like this
No.
in the criminal justice system? Ever?
No. Anything that would be presented like this would have been thrown out. The motion to dismiss would have been granted early on. It doesn't meet the standards. You don't have the evidence. And it doesn't matter what any of your witnesses say. You got one witness that had nothing to do with the allegations, which aren't even crimes.
I know. So they go through every day. Let's go over the testimony. And then this was shocking, and this was shocking, but none of it's a crime.
And in the Cross today or yesterday, you have Cohen basically saying, oh, yeah, well, no, I lied about that. Yeah, no, I lied about that. I lied about that.
But
Yeah, I was convicted of lying about that. Yeah.
How does a judge allow evidence in when you can't point to the actual crime? How can you allow evidence in?
Again, evidence exactly. Evidence of what? Right? I mean, point to the crime first and say, here's the crime, and then evidence. Well, they don't even point to a crime. They just throw something up there.
Right. So how do you start with evidence or witnesses that get on the stand and talk about things that aren't a crime and a court continues? Yeah. When does a judge say, well, this has got nothing to do with it?
Right.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. More on the Trump trial coming up here in a little bit. Inflation also. We've got more on inflation. What else we got here? A ton of other stuff. Tariffs.
Yeah.
And Biden's polling denial. Some interesting conversation on that yesterday.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Hello. You ready to go? Let's start with some audio. Woo-hoo! Let's go to New York City, and you know where I'm going here. I didn't even tell him. And let's go to Mayor Eric Adams.
Yeah.
Talking about migrants and job openings.
That states those jobs that we are in high demand, we could expedite. How do we have a large body of people that are in our city and country that are excellent swimmers, and at the same time we need lifeguards? And the only obstacle is that we won't give them the right to work to become a lifeguard. That just doesn't make sense. But if we had a plan that say you have a shortage of food service workers and those who fit the criteria, we're going to expedite you.
And of course, that went viral saying, how do you know the migrants are excellent swimmers?
Right.
What?
What? How does, what?
By the way, just so you know, and growing up in New York and being a lifeguard, you have to go through certification to become a lifeguard.
Were you a lifeguard?
I passed the certification. I was never a lifeguard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was I took the certification at the local YMCA.
Right.
I had no intention of becoming a lifeguard. I just knew that I would always be around water and wanted to do it. And I think I probably got it at 18 or 19. So.
Yeah.
Because before I was 18, I believe you couldn't be a lifeguard, but you could take the training. You got junior lifeguard saving. I took that. Then I took senior lifeguard saving when I got to be 18. But I was not like you. I didn't sit there with white stuff on my nose, and I said on my nose, not in your nose.
Yeah.
The white stuff on it, sitting as a lifeguard up in that high chair like you did with babes all looking at you going, Eric's a lifeguard.
What's that skinny kid going to do if somebody drowns? I just laughed so hard when I saw that audio cut or when I saw the video. I just thought to myself, well, first of all, I watched the two individuals, the two ladies, to either side of Mayor Adams. And while their facial expression didn't seemingly change, I've kind of projected my own thoughts into their mind like, what did he just say? Can you not just say, listen, there are a lot of jobs out there that a lot of industries out there that have a shortage of workers, and we could fill those roles right now if we could allow these individuals to work.
Right.
You go to the whole.
Right.
I don't even. Is there any self-awareness at all with the mayor?
Well,
I don't know how you just lob that out there as a matter of fact.
One of the questions I got earlier, and it was a serious question, what's he talking about? Is he saying that since they crossed the Rio Grande, they know how to swim?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of places, so many of the places, you don't actually have to swim.
No,
you can wade across or walk across.
A lot of it is just desert. It's not a river at all.
Right.
You're not crossing any water.
And so it's like, where do you get the excellent swimmer thing from? Is there something that I don't know?
Yeah.
Is there because these questions are being asked to me, and I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea what the hell he was talking about. It's like, is there a higher number? Is this a statistic that's commonplace out there that people from all over the world, because they're not, again, the majority are not from Mexico,
right,
Central America, but from all over the world.
Right.
Is there something out there and evidence that migrants know how to swim really good? Because he said they're excellent swimmers, and therefore they could be lifeguards. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just so weird. Because you could basically, again, you just have to say, hey, we got a lot of industries right now that are looking for people, and we could fill those roles, and it could help the local economy if we could do that. You could, if you're going to float something like that. The problem is that the mayor himself is politically drowning.
And needs a lifeguard.
And he needs someone to rescue him.
I was as confused as I've been my entire life driving with those signs that say, damaged guardrail ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, could you please tell me about the pothole in the middle of the street?
Mm-hmm.
I don't plan on running in to the guardrail right at that point.
Just in case you were counting on, leaning on it.
And I still see it all the time. I would say once a week I see those signs out there.
Yeah, and they're more prevalent since texting has come about. Hey, don't be texting over the next 3 miles. It's not going to go well.
Guardrail damage ahead. Well, I have no intention of running into the guardrail at that point.
Yeah, it's not like I'm leaning on it. It's not like this is some kind of weird race where you just kind of, if you remember that third turn, you just lean into the wall. It'll guide you around. Yeah. I don't know, man. It seems there is no self-awareness, at least in that moment. I've been saying all along, I don't think Adams is going to be around long. I just don't. His own party's not happy with him at all. You can't fix the situation that your city is in. You refuse to fix it. So on top of illegal immigrants being everywhere, you also have prosecutors like Bragg that want to go after people for nothing and set criminals free, and crime is on the rise. And, violent crime, especially on the rise. You're not politically, you're not going to win that. That's just not good leadership. And I don't know what happens, honestly, in cities like New York. I don't know what happens. You look at Mayor Brandon Johnson in Chicago. Here's a radical. His numbers are in the tank, and he's just, doubling down on the radical behavior and the support for radicals as they head into convention.
To the point where now, because of his opinion on Israel, that the DNC is talking about, and top-level Democrats are saying, okay, can we get away with a completely virtual convention where we actually don't go to Chicago because we're afraid of the imagery of the riots? Right. Well, why would you be afraid? Well, because Mayor Johnson has made it publicly clear that he is for the pro-terrorist protesters.
Yeah.
And therefore, we don't know what we want to do. A hybrid. Well, I'm not really sure what well, we'll have some people there, but we don't really want to fill the auditorium with thousands of people because we can't trust our own party won't be screaming Genocide Joe if he gets up there to speak. Wouldn't it be amazing if Biden spoke from the White House and was not there, and was not that the convention hall was actually dark and they had a room somewhere else, like a smaller room in somewhere in Chicago where they had just 200 loyalists and they were the ones that would cheer for the president?
I honestly don't know how they're going to pull it together to get delegates there, get them set up. And how do you stop it, right? How do you change the process? How do you redirect it? I mean, you would have to, at the last minute, find some place that would be more secure. Where would you go? Where would the Democratic Party go that could keep the radicals at bay? Well, the radicals are firmly embedded in their party, so there's no way around that. There's no way to run from them, even if you wanted to go to a red state because you thought it was going to be, you were going to have greater security, greater law enforcement, or support for the law enforcement that would be there. I don't know. I don't know how you get around the fact that the radicals are everywhere. They're part of the party. Some of them are in office. I don't know how you pull off a convention. I don't know how you've got to get it done. You've got business to be done. The delegates have to do their business. I don't know how it gets done.
Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, seriously, where do you take it? You put them all in in hotel, the big conference rooms in hotels?
Well, they figured that in 2020, hiding Biden worked, so now they want to hide the entire Democratic Party.
Well, no, that's exactly what they're going to have to do. I mean, if you want to pull it off, that's going to be the safest way to get it done. I just don't know logistically how do you do it.
You know, when you talk about the election coming up, and then there was a story in Axios yesterday, Biden's polling denial, why he doesn't believe he's behind. President Biden doesn't believe that he's behind, and neither do many of his closest advisors, according to people familiar with the matter. Axios had it, so of course they asked the question, why it matters.
Yeah, of course.
The dismissiveness of the poor polling is sincere, not public spin, according to Democrats who have spoken privately with the president and his team. The bedrock belief has informed Biden's largely steady-as-she-goes campaign, even as many Democrats outside the White House are agitating for the campaign to change direction, given that Biden is polling well behind where he was 4 years ago. They don't believe it. And then I go to National Review, Noah Rothman's column. Joe Biden is delusional. At least that's the upshot of Axios' latest piece on the president's outlook towards his reelection prospects. Joe Biden does not believe his bad poll numbers, neither do his closest advisors, most of whom agree that the public polling simply doesn't reflect the president's support. That suffices to explain the president's largely steady as she goes campaign. Now, it is quite possible that the president and his cohorts don't believe that the polling landscape today is indicative of where the voters will end up in November, but Axios' own reporting indicates that Biden does pay close attention to his numbers. The report says the president tells donors in closed-door meetings that the momentum is clearly in our favor, with the polls moving towards us and away from Trump. That alone suggests Biden puts at least some stock in the survey data. As for the notion that the president is unfazed by his standing with the public, the administration's utterly confused and increasingly manic approach to navigating the politics of Israel's war against Hamas betrays the White House understanding that the political state of play today is potentially fatal. By the end of the report, Axios treats its readers to the impetus for its dispatch of Biden's myopia. Some Democrats think Biden's team is in denial about the polling and sleepwalking into defeat. On that score, there can be no doubt. The Biden campaign appears to be fully appraised of the panic settling over the Democratic landscape. To assure the concerns expressed by party members, the Biden campaign dispatched one of its pollsters, Jeffrey Pollack, to outline the president's theory of the race as we head into the summer. Listeners to Pollack's recent conversation with New Republic's Greg Sargent will not come away with the impression that the campaign is deluding itself about the scale of the challenges. As Pollack says, the campaign has to actively move the numbers because there's clear evidence that we are not doing well enough, but the campaign strategy to achieve that is no mystery. It is heavily reliant on Donald Trump and the issue of abortion to do much of the work, and to the extent that the president's reelection effort is dedicated to persuasion, it will be almost wholly focused on the disaffected progressive constituencies whose enthusiasm for Biden has ebbed along with his adoption of policies preferable to the vast center of the American electorate. Pollack admitted that Biden needs to do better with younger voters, black voters, and Hispanic voters, but it's clear the campaign is counting to draw those voters back into the president's camp. What we've really seen here is some defection to both undecided and third party. The campaign intends to devote its attention to these demographics, spending to court them at a level that Trump cannot match. But by late fall, the campaign expects the threat of a Trump restoration will be sufficient to get those people off their proverbial asses. That's a quote. Okay. I would disagree with that. I would say that it is delusion. On there, they've got serious troubles. As they write here, the campaign appears to believe that the former president is just as contemptuous of the electorate's moderate elements. It's counting on that in combination with the pile of money under which it intends to bury Trump in the fall to be enough to pull out a squeaker victory in November. And this is what should terrify the Democrats. The Biden campaign lacks either the imagination or the will to craft for itself a broader coalition of voters that might yield a commanding victory. It seems convinced that Biden's only pathway to re-election is extraordinarily narrow. So expect to see more pandering to the radicals. Steel yourself for more efforts to weaken Americans' strategic relationship with Israel in the Middle East. Anticipate more bribes, more tedious celebrity solicitations, more appeals to solidarity among Americans who identify with the Democrats' lifestyle brand, because that's all they've got. which means the only thing they have is the radicalism that Biden is behind. Now, I don't believe that necessarily, and I agree with him on this point, that the president coming out and saying $1 billion in new weaponry shows that they're scared. 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
In Red Eye Radio, he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I think this is what's going on inside the White House and inside the campaign. They're led by radicals, as we all know. The majority of the White House staff are extremely radical.
Yeah.
They're as far left as you can get. They're anti-Semites, as we all know, by wanting early on. Because remember, the anonymous letter, it was anonymous. The anonymous letter from the White House staff came out on January 3rd.
Yeah.
You had the 500, remember, the 500 bureaucrats inside the Biden administration write their letter for a ceasefire back last November.
Right.
This hasn't got nothing to do with Rafah or whatever.
Right.
They want Israel to lose. And you had, you had the president by coming out last week. I mean, he just killed himself by stating one day, no matter what, we're ironclad support for Israel. And the next day, coming out and saying, okay, that's when the story came out, we're going to stop shipments. Then it became, okay, we're only stopping one shipment. Then yesterday it came out that, okay, we're going to send $1 billion more. We're going to send $1 billion more on top of what Congress has already approved. You only do that for one reason in that radical White House. You're afraid. You've seen the polling numbers on that issue, and it's not good.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you want if you can't listen live overnight. Well, looking at the Axios story out there that Biden doesn't believe the polling, and inside they really, really don't. I mean, this isn't just for the press. They really don't believe the polling. They don't believe it at all. Well, that's hogwash. They do believe it. Otherwise, the president would not have announced late yesterday $1 billion in new weaponry. This isn't, again, what Congress has already approved. He's saying they need more weapons, including things like tank shells. It's like, my God, he's all over the place. The only reason that's happening is they're panicking because they realize what is. Now, the fact that a week ago is when it was Tuesday, right? It was Tuesday of last week where he came out and was saying his anti-Semitism speech. And then the next day, oh, by the way, the story came out. Oh, by the way, they've stopped shipments of weaponry, to Israel. And, then he came out real strong on that and then got blasted on it. And by the time you get to Tuesday of this week, it's like, oh, $1 billion in new weaponry. And this is on top of what Congress has done. So I'm actually more pro-Israel than the Republicans because I'm asking for even $1 billion more. It's like, sorry, you can't sell that.
No, you can't.
And the one thing that you brought up, too, that I think is really important, he is sticking. Now, I don't know if this is because of his cognitive problems or they've just said, let's lie. Look, we got caught in our lie of the week, but that was Jen Psaki, and she doesn't work for us anymore in her book about the president looking at his watch when you had U.S. soldiers being returned from Afghanistan.
Right.
And she said, well, that didn't happen. She had to revise the book. She's a piece of crap. She really is.
Yeah.
What a pathological.
Well, we all knew it happened. We saw it.
I know. But this is how they believe they can get away with any lie.
Right.
And
even when we're looking at something, they can tell us, well, that's not what you're seeing.
Right. And you've got the president, and you mentioned this to me during the break. you said, man, he's just sticking to this, that inflation was 9% when he came in, and that is just going viral every single day. I think Snopes came out and said, no, it's false. The fact checkers are coming out and saying it's false. The left is coming out because you can't say it's true.
Right. No, he is.
By the way, can you imagine the Biden, the Biden Labor Department? Who was it? Who comes out with the official inflation rate? Is it the Treasury?
No, it is with the. It's the. Is it the Treasury?
Okay, whatever. But
I'll have to look at it.
The government comes out and revised their numbers. It was 9% inflation in January of 2024.
Yeah.
Excuse me, in January.
Right.
In January of 21, inflation was at 9. just cooked the books in order to make it. But he's sticking with that as if, just inflation's gone up just a little bit for us. But no, it was 9% when I came in. Now he's continually telling that lie, and you can't get away with that.
Well, it's a lie.
Yeah.
You can't categorize it as, when he's doubling down, you can't categorize it anymore as anything but a lie. When, he's repeating it and he's throwing in the other comparative number that it was 9% when the lie, it was 9% when I came into office, now it's 3%. That's a lie. If he says 9% and misspeaks, and we want to categorize the first time, and everyone wants to compartmentalize that as cognitive issues, you could probably get away with that. The second time, it's clearly a lie. It's deliberate. It's part of the campaign. And they think that people are stupid. They really do. Because I guess they think if you're going to conjure up such BS, the meeting would go something like this. Well, we did peak over 9% on inflation. Let's just blame that on Trump. How can we blame it on Trump? Well, we'll just say it was at the beginning of the Biden presidency. When he came into office, it was 9%. Now it's 3%. People don't know. They're not keeping track of it. They think you're stupid. That's why they conjure up such BS. They think the average American is stupid. They think they can get away with it. It's the only reason you lie.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, that, and we go back to Jen Psaki in her book. She knew it was a lie.
Yeah.
But she put it in anyway. They have become, and this was interesting when I was talking to the Trump supporter yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying, he says, they said Trump lied. And he goes, and at times goes, Trump would tell stupid ones.
Right.
But this administration, every single day, it's a brand new lie.
Right.
Every single day. And they're monster lies. They're easily figured out lies, and they're lies of actually importance.
Right. By the way, it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I knew that, and I couldn't think of it earlier.
All right.
I knew it wasn't the other, but
that's why I said the Labor Department. I'd said that earlier.
Yeah, it's the whole idea of this, again, conjuring up such a big lie is that you think you can actually win it. You think people aren't going to remember. You think, because there is talk. If you hear it in the financial, if you read the financial blogs or watch a financial news channel, then you see it as what? You see it people talking about, it was at its peak over 9%. Well, Biden's just going to push the timeline. Yeah, that was because of Trump. They think they can get away with that. They think people are stupid. And it's not working well because on social media, over and over again, it's being repeated over and over again, the facts.
And what I've seen over the last, I would say, month, and really heavily since the Trump trial started, and I was asking you this, I sense the media has turned, and I'm talking about the White House press corps, has turned more accusatory of the administration, is asking them tougher questions, and is getting sick of the questions not being answered. And I've noticed that the questions are putting Biden, even the questions when he's running to the helicopter, are putting him on the defensive. Where Trump said this, that you're about this. And then he'll go, hey, he's just a loser. But it looks horrible. But I've noticed that they've almost put Trump, and you something, you made the greatest point just during I think you were walking out the door during our last break. And you said, well, one of the problems is Trump, think about this, Trump coming out of the court and the setup that he has there looks more presidential than Biden.
Trump on trial looks more presidential than Biden.
That's what you said. Trump on trial looks more presidential. That's a huge problem.
And I think they're desperate to overcome that. I think the White House is desperate to overcome that. Try and backtrack on the whole thing with Israel. Try and do everything you can on inflation. It makes me wonder, doubling down on this whole 9% garbage, what they actually see are their internals that they believe. Did they get a preliminary report from the Labor Department that shows them it's going to be greater than the median forecast? That inflation numbers, keep in mind, we've been saying all along, the consumer already knows what the inflation for April was. They paid for it. They lived through it. We've been there. This is a retroactive report, and the question is, what is that trend, and what do they believe is going to happen? I don't think the wholesale inflation numbers did them any justice, for sure, but they're hopeful, I guess, that people don't put too much into the wholesale inflation. I don't know. I don't know why you make up such a huge lie and then double down on it.
Especially when it's going to be asked to Karine Jean-Pierre, and they're going to have to back off on it. Yeah, that's the thing.
Right.
They're going to back off. Well, because the president keeps saying that when he took over, inflation was 9%. Well, look, I need to be very careful here. Because we need to be careful when we're talking about numbers. The president feels your pain.
Yeah.
Well, I feel your pain. Well, the president feels your pain, and him mentioning the 9% is to show just how successful we have been in taking down inflation and how our work continues. But that's not the question. The question is, why did he say it's 9% that he came into office with the 9% inflation rate when the 9% inflation rate happened when he was president? When he got into office, the inflation rate was 1.4%.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's because it's obvious to everyone that it was the Trump policies, delayed policies, that caused the inflation, and that's what the president is talking about.
Uh-huh.
Can you sell that?
No.
No, you can't sell that.
No, you can't.
I'm just trying to think of how she will answer the question. I'm trying to figure out how she won't answer the question.
Yeah, how she'll avoid answering it. And I don't know. But when he repeats it, that's deliberate. That's no longer a gaffe or however you want to compartmentalize it. That's a lie. And it's on purpose. They're setting out to do this. I don't know. Has she been asked about it yet? At all? Was she asked about it the first time?
I didn't get to see the whole thing yesterday, but I didn't see any clip, and that clip would have made the top Karine Jean-Pierre of the day, I would think.
I would think so.
I'll check again, but I don't think that she commented on the 9% yesterday.
Right, yeah.
At least I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Where she had commented. But it's going to be brought up today after 2 days in a row. Or not 2 days in a row, 2 times in a row.
Yeah.
I'm stating that basically he inherited 9% inflation.
Right.
Did you see 2CS yesterday? The question was like something like, what does the president think that everybody thinks so bad of him? Well, I don't know what you're talking about. It was so funny.
Right.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, what's his response to his numbers right now? But we went over that. I mean, they're in denial. They don't believe it. They don't believe any of the numbers. I mean, they don't believe the polls.
And one of the biggest problems, and we'll talk about this coming up on the top of the hour and have some audio from yesterday, the Republican Party, you and I said a couple of weeks ago, we said the president is starting to campaign correctly. You know, he's campaigning correctly. He's talking about we. When he got together with DeSantis and they buried the hatchet, we went, whoa, that's big. Now that Speaker Johnson showed up yesterday, you've got everybody. You've got what I call the three biggies that have all agreed.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to the Trump supporter yesterday, as I said, they're back again. The Trump supporters out with the flags out near a major highway near me. Mm-hmm. So I stopped by and talked to the one gentleman, one of the leaders of the group, and I would say that his opinion on Trump is exactly what mine is. Did not deny, and there were Trump flags everywhere. He was wearing a shirt, free Trump and everything else. He knows Trump's vulnerabilities, but
sure.
He thought, and he knows that they've got to unite as a party. And he knows, he was absolutely thrilled that DeSantis and him buried the hatchet. He understood how important DeSantis is.
I mean, it really is the best way to, the only way to handle this if you're going to win, and it really is a positive for the party right now.
And then Mike Johnson coming aboard, and I said to him, there's going to be differences. And I said, I disagree with Trump. He goes, I disagree with Trump at times. It's bigger than that now. It's bigger than just Trump. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, here's the cut again that came out of him yesterday. The president talking about inflation.
Inflation has gone slightly up. It was at 9% when I came in.
There it is. It was at 9% when I came in. And that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yep.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Coming up in a couple of moments, we'll play some audio of the Speaker of the House speaking outside the Trump trial yesterday. But first off, we got to make sure that we cover this because this was brought up last week by the White House that Vice President Kamala Harris would be out there now promoting the economy. They have sent her out there to promote the economy. Here she is on the talk show, Sherry, yesterday.
Oh, I brought you again.
Oh, what you brought? Oh! Now, okay, so what is this?
Those are White House M&Ms.
Oh!
And so you see the seal of the president and the name, Joe Biden's signature there. and these are White House M&Ms.
I love White House M&Ms.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're White House M&Ms, in case you didn't get that. My God.
Okay, so what you're saying, I'm just, we're over halfway through the show, and I'm a little slow right now. So what you're saying, these are M&M candies from the White House.
Yes.
Are they?
With the picture of Joe Biden and his picture on, they look like cigarette packs, by the way. Just
Yeah. Yeah. Why should we believe it? Because they could be counterfeit M&Ms, or as I like to call them, W's and W's.
Well, my next question would be: are these campaign M&Ms, or are these M&Ms that are paid for by the taxpayer? Does Joe Biden have his own special M&M box that is, with the debt that we're in, are we making, that's what I would have asked, are we making M&Ms, is the taxpayer paying for presidential M&Ms?
Right. Have they gone in, has the government gone in, and has the administration, the executive branch, gone in and commandeered the production at one of the Mars Candies facilities, like we might do in an emergency situation at wartime to make things that are necessary?
Well, and has the White House invoked the Van Halen mandate, where only certain color M&Ms are allowed in there?
Right. You have to ask these questions.
I forgot.
Are they plain? Are they peanut?
I forgot what color they.
The rumor was brown. No brown.
Okay,
M&Ms.
all right, okay. I wasn't sure. I thought it was brown. Then I went, wait a minute. No, wasn't that the acid that you were supposed to avoid at Woodstock?
It could be.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it might be.
Stay away from the brown acid and M&Ms.
Yeah.
Or the brown acid that looks like M&Ms.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I would love to know.
But I love it because they have this big to do. I mean, she's out there actually. This is her tour. You go on fluff shows, where you won't be challenged to promote the great economy. I mean, it is just mind-boggling. They're just delusional. All right, let's get to this. Was yesterday Speaker Johnson holding a press briefing outside of Trump's trial yesterday.
Good morning, everyone. I called President Trump and told him I wanted to be here myself to call out what is a travesty of justice, and I think everybody around the country can see that. President Trump is a friend, and I wanted to be here to support him. I'm here speaking with you outside because the court won't allow us to speak inside the building. That's just one of the many things that are wrong here. This is the fifth week that President Trump has been in court for this sham of a trial. They are doing this intentionally to keep him here and keep him off of the campaign trail. And I think everybody in the country can see that for what it is. I'm an attorney. I'm a former litigator myself. I am disgusted by what is happening here, what is being done here to our entire system of justice overall. The people are losing faith right now in this country, in our institutions. They're losing faith in our system of justice. And the reason for that is because they see it being abused as it is being done here in New York. The facts here are very important. Facts are always important in a trial, or at least they're supposed to be. The president's actions in this matter were previously reviewed and no charges were filed. Why is that? Because there's no crime here. Now, 8 years later, suddenly they've resurrected this thing. They brought it back. And why is that? Well, just apply common sense. Everyone can see. It's painfully obvious that we're now 6 months out from an election day. And that's the reason. That is the reason why they brought these charges here and across the country. What we've got here is a partisan Democrat district attorney. We have a Biden donor judge. And we have an assistant DA who was recently a top official at the Department of Justice, Biden's DOJ. and recently received over $10,000 in payments from the Democratic National Committee. The star witness here is Michael Cohen. I just listened to a few moments of his testimony this morning, and it is consistent with what he's already done. This is a man who is clearly on a mission for personal revenge, and who is widely known as a witness who has trouble with the truth. He is someone who has a history of perjury and is well known for it. No one should believe a word he says today. He lied to Congress, he lied to the IRS, he lied to federal election officials. Even Cohen's own lawyer testified to a grand jury that he is not reliable. So there's nothing that he presents here that should be given any weight at all by a jury, and certainly not this judge. The crime that they are accusing President Trump of is falsification of business records. But I think everybody knows he is not the bookkeeper for his company. President Trump is innocent of these charges. And again, anyone with common sense can understand what is happening here. In the midst of all this nonsense and corruption, they have placed a ridiculous and unprecedented gag order on President Trump. They are overriding his constitutional right to defend himself from political smears from his harshest critics at the most important time. He is soon to be officially the nominee of one of the major parties in our country, running for president. And they have him tied up here in this ridiculous prosecution that is not about justice. It's all about politics, and everybody can see that. President Trump is leading in swing state polling. The American people see right through these politically motivated attacks. I've been in 102 cities in over half the states in the last few months. And I can tell you that no matter where we are around the country, I've been doing large events. People from all walks of life come to these events. And they are concerned about this. They are disgusted about this. They are fed up. They've had enough because they see what's happening. It's impossible for anybody to deny that looks at this objectively that the judicial system in our country has been weaponized against President Trump. The system is using all the tools at its disposal right now to punish one president and provide cover for another. And meanwhile, among the atrocities here, the judge's own daughter is making millions of dollars doing online fundraising for Democrats. They're using this trial as a hook. It's so corrupt. It's so corrupt, and everybody knows it. If Alvin Bragg thinks the American people will believe these absurd charges, take a look at the turnout at Trump events. Compare those to Biden events, by the way, but he had over 100,000 people in New Jersey. By some estimates, far more than that, because the lineup of people getting into the event was thousands deep as well. That shows you where they are. They know this trial is a sham. They know that President Trump is being mistreated by the judicial system. And it's not just this case, of course. This is a year-long partisan witch hunt, years long. And it's been going on for quite some time. We're seeing the same thing in the classified documents case. That one is so egregious, the trial's been indefinitely postponed. I'm working with Chairman Jordan of the House Judiciary Committee, Chairman Comer of our Oversight Committee, on measures to rein in the abuses of Special Counsel Jack Smith. The latest revelation is that they've manipulated documents. They might have tampered with the evidence in the case, it seems, and that doesn't surprise any of us. In Congress, we have oversight responsibility, and it is our objective and our responsibility to hold them accountable. These are politically motivated trials, and they are a disgrace. It is election interference, and they show how desperate the opposition that President Trump has, and how desperate they truly are. The American people are not going to let this stand. Election day cannot get here soon enough, and we will continue to shine a light on all of this in Congress because we have that constitutional responsibility. Again.
So there you go. That's the speaker yesterday. One of the most interesting things is, did you see the interview with Dan Goldman that said he counseled Cohen before he went up?
Yeah.
It was like, well, you're just showing the Democratic interference on this. I mean, it's absolutely blunt, but except for Goldman, think about this. You've now got Republicans, major Republicans every day. Ramaswamy also spoke yesterday. Mm-hmm. You had different members of Congress speak yesterday. It seems like that every day now the president is going to have Republicans in there and then speaking afterwards.
Yep.
Where are the Democrats?
Nope.
You had Goldman out, but Goldman has no credibility. And when he said that he had advised and counseled Cohen for his testimony, well, then you just tie the Democratic Party
Exactly.
and one of their pit bulls and one of their biggest pathological liars. You've just admitted. I'm like, wow, that's horrible that happened. But you think every single day. And number one, when you take the polling that came from early last week, which means it's 2 weeks old, that showed that 57% of Americans believe this is politically motivated and 43% don't. Look, you and I've done this long enough. Normally you have something like this and there's a trial going on. It'll be 45-45 and then 10 saying, I don't know.
Right, yeah.
But to have 57-43, and that was over 2 weeks ago, and everybody sees what happened at this point, it probably is close to 60-40 right now. The Republicans would not be out there. They would not. You would not have Speaker Johnson out there. You wouldn't have every Republican that wants to get in front of a mic wanting to be there at the trial so they can speak on it if they didn't know that this was a slam dunk, if they didn't believe that their argument was slam dunk against the Democrats and against the Biden administration and against the rogue prosecutors and judges. You wouldn't have it. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't happen. If they thought Trump was guilty of something, they wouldn't be there.
Well,
they're there because they know it's a sham.
Because if there were any concern of this tainting the party at all, you stay miles away. You don't any risk whatsoever of that. Even if you thought it was only going to be negative press that would essentially taint the GOP, you would stay away. And then you would hear things like, well, we'll let the process play out and we'll see what the jury finds and we respect the process and blah, 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 blah. That's not what you're seeing here. What you're seeing is the GOP front and center on site, big players, the Speaker of the House.
And what you're seeing the media saying is, yeah, but this really isn't changing people in any way. Yeah, it's energizing the Republicans like crazy to go out.
Well,
when I was talking to that dentist yesterday who was, out there with the back with the flags and everything else.
Yeah.
He was blunt. He goes, I don't know what Trump did. But whatever he did, this isn't a crime.
Right.
And he's being set up. So when Liz Cheney, you see, she came out about Mike Johnson. Mm-hmm. Oh, basically he's so, he claims to be, I'm paraphrasing here,
mm-hmm.
A man of high morality, and here he's standing by this guy who cheated on his wife.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what it's about.
It's not. And, the other half of that is we said, if they thought they were going to be tainted by this, they would stay miles away. On top of that, they have to believe it will benefit them greatly. They're jumping on this. The GOP is showing up in recent days for a big reason because they think it's going to help them. Not only is this helping Trump, this has the potential of helping them as a party.
And this was you did not have in 2016 or 2020.
No.
And that is a united Republican Party going in and basically saying, this is lawfare. There's a two-tier system of justice.
Yep.
It's turning into a banana republic.
Yep.
They're going after the opposition party's candidate because they can't win. And they're doing it in a totally unconstitutional way.
Yep.
And I believe in a way that should get Bragg and the judge gone.
Yeah.
Disbarred.
Right.
Now, the judge may save himself if he comes out with the direct, and does a direct verdict and says, okay, there's not enough evidence. If he dismisses this, he'll be fine.
Right.
Bragg is elected. So you can you bring a case? Can you bring a case with no evidence of a crime before you're disbarred? What does it take? What is the level in New York State to get disbarred?
Right.
As Turley said yesterday, the prosecution has basically said, this is it. We have no more.
Right.
He goes, they haven't even justified the misdemeanor. They haven't even explained that when Trump said legal fees, how that's a crime.
Right.
He goes, they haven't laid out any of what they claim is a crime. We're charging Trump with a conspiracy to blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but there's nothing here in the charges that match what you just said there.
Right.
And the American people know it. and the Republicans know it, and a lot of independents know it. And frankly, this just like the Twitter files, the censoring that you saw coming from liberals inside the government, what they wanted to do to shut down conversation in this country, just like that was shocking. I believe this is shocking a lot of Americans. Democrats may not care about it, but that's not who you're trying to reach with your message.
Right.
866-98-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Coming up following the bottom of the hour, Biden and the Chinese tariffs. We'll get to that. Look at this here. Democrats push Biden to act on food prices with inflation ranking as a top issue ahead of the election. Elizabeth Warren led the letter Monday morning, calling for Biden to exercise your executive authority to take additional action to address rising food prices without congressional action. The letter amassed 40 Democratic signatures in the House and the Senate.
The first thing they're going to do is give free White House M&Ms to everybody.
Well, what they're saying is that they want him to prosecute. They want the Department of Justice,
of course,
to prosecute food suppliers for gouging.
Yes.
Again, they're trying to take the responsibility away from their policies and blame it on somebody else.
Of course.
Have a line open. 1-866-90-RED-EYE. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here. Did you hear some of the reporters yesterday hitting the White House on the tariffs, saying, well, you have stated that you're not going to tax anybody that makes under $400,000, yet every tariff you put on is a tax on the American consumer.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to tax anybody. Oh, so you're saying you're not going to directly tax. We're not going to tax anyone. You know, the whole thing about tariffs, and you and I have said, look, there's justification. When you look, for example, and we've talked about, well, first we talked about the absurdity of the tariffs on China's EVs coming in, and not the fact that, you know, when you look, for example, at the court cases going on right now for Chinese, the Chinese stealing the battery technology of Tesla, and you know, and you can look at China, as we've said before, and say No, China cheats. So if they're not going to do things fairly, then you have to retaliate in some way. But it's the fact that when we do that, that we pretend that there are no consequences to the tariffs.
Right.
And by the way, both sides have done this.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, I think it was John Carney from Breitbart who was on with Larry Kudlow.
Mm.
And he came out because they were talking about the possibility of Biden doing this. And he said, well, the Trump tariffs did not increase inflation. There's no evidence that the Trump tariffs increased inflation. And inflation was very low at that time. And when you look at the total amount of tariffs on steel and aluminum they were talking about back then, it had very little effect on inflation, but it did create job loss.
Right.
Tariffs are never. I was just watching Ed O'Keefe from CBS saying, well, they're saying that this is an investment because if you can protect the automobile market in the United States, there will be investment into it, and therefore it will boom. No. When you increase the cost of goods and services arbitrarily, everybody hurts. It does not help.
Yeah.
Now, it can go in different ways. You might not get inflation. You might get, as we have talked about, and the Wall Street Journal covered it extensively, you got job loss. Not in the industry that they're protecting, steel or aluminum, but because the cost goes up, those consumers of steel and aluminum buy less steel and aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened during the Trump tariffs. But again, the amount as opposed to the entire amount of the economy was not great. But tariffs always hurt. You may protect one industry, but you protect that one industry by allowing them to raise the cost. They become more profitable, but they sell fewer items because it's more expensive. And who hurts are the people that use that product.
The consumer pays the tariffs. That's what it comes down to.
The consumer always pays the tariffs. I mean, it's like when Trump said, I'm going to put tariffs on Mexico so they'll pay it. And it was like, and then he eventually dropped that idea because it was like, well, no, you can't do that because Mexico doesn't pay the tariffs. The American taxpayer pays the tariff. We got pushback on that from Trump supporters.
Yeah.
We were right.
Yeah, that's the way it always works.
Well, that's because it's the same thing as there is no difference. It's the same thing as minimum wage. You can't have it both ways. You can't sit there and say, well, Biden tariffs are bad, Trump's tariffs are good. Now, the overall good against China, maybe something that you say it's something that we have to do. It's a cost of doing business because they will not cooperate with us. You and I have always acknowledged that. There was no reason to put steel tariffs or aluminum tariffs on Canada.
Right.
It's completely unnecessary.
Right. No, I mean,
there should not have been. Trump should have attempted to at that time, and maybe he will now bring everybody in together. But as Trump has said, if he becomes president, now he'll put 200% tariffs on electric vehicles coming in from China. Mm-hmm. Now, that's ridiculous because, number one, Biden, by putting the 100% tariffs on, you may say, look, it's justified. But what he's doing is he's protecting a industry in the United States that is only in existence because of government taxpayer subsidies. So Biden isn't trying to protect a profitable U.S. company. He's trying to protect an industry that can't make money, that's subsidized by the United States, and he wishes to keep it going as long as possible by keeping competition out, because if the subsidies weren't there, the car companies would be making a lot more money because they'd be producing gasoline and diesel vehicles that they could actually sell at a profit instead of EVs that they're selling at a loss. Mm-hmm. So it is ironic there.
Well, and what's missing from that equation is the demand. It would be one thing if there was massive demand for the product itself, and you go to put tariffs on the Chinese products coming in, the Chinese imports coming in. There are very different dynamics there. Not that it would help The consumer still pays it. But you've got something where there is no demand.
Right.
And you're not going to fix that with the tariffs. In fact, you're only going to increase prices and hurt demand even further.
So between now and when he's elected, the number of electric cars that will be sold, the increase in any possible price is probably not going to cause much inflation. It might cause more job losses.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's going to be insignificant, and the job losses when you're talking about the Trump steel and aluminum tariffs were in the thousands, not the millions.
Right.
But it still hurt. Now, Trump's plan, I haven't heard that he's changed it, is now for 200% on electric vehicles, and a 40% tariff on all Chinese products coming in to the country, and a 10% for everyone else on every single import into the country. And I think that Carney was trying to say that if Trump does all the new tariffs, it's not going to cause inflation. Well, that's where he would be wrong based on the numbers, because I did the figuring the other day. If Trump came into office and put a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the country and 40% on China, I'm not even counting the 200% EVs because I don't think that's a huge look. China's producing them and not making a profit either. So this is really dumb that we're doing tariffs to protect dying industries. I mean, that's something that's very unique, that are dead already.
Yeah.
In fact, they're dead already because they wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for taxpayer subsidies both in China and the United States.
That's my point on the demand.
Or not tariffs, I mean subsidies.
This is not like there's booming demand for this product.
But if you took in the marketplace, the profitable things, what would it cost a U.S. consumer if Trump did that? My figures show $500 billion a year is what you'd have to pay extra. And that is before the retaliation comes from the other countries that will put tariffs on your products.
Yeah, right.
But it would at least be $500 billion is what it would cost every year. So you put that, for example, $500 billion tax increase would be a blow to the economy if you did that, because if $500 billion would be over 10 years, that actually gets into money. You're talking, $5 trillion. If you put in $500 billion tax increase, I believe that'd be the biggest tax increase of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be $5 trillion over a period of 10 years that you would bring in.
Right.
And so you wouldn't do that because it would affect, economic growth. And so when you talk about the actual numbers, and that's the thing, when you get into it, people like protectionism. They're like, okay, we're protecting our industry. No, you're protecting that industry. You're hurting anybody who buys from it. It's just like the same thing as minimum wage. You increase the minimum wage, you never make an economy better. Now, you put tariffs on, they may be justified because you're trying to force a country not to cheat on trade. But in the case of EVs, both the United States and China are dumping.
Yeah.
We're dumping on, except the dumping is in their own countries. Because we're dumping something that the companies can't make a profit on.
Yeah.
And that's dumping. Right. Well, you saw it. What do you think it was when Tesla lowered the prices? We're lowering the prices of our electric vehicles. Where you're not making a profit on it. You're dumping them into the market.
Right.
You're not making a profit on it. But we're talking about the profitable side of the economy when tariffs are put on. Still, though, it hurts the economy. Tariffs never help an economy overall. They protect certain businesses, and that's what that's what Biden is trying to do with these tariffs in battleground states that may produce steel or aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
That's his goal.
Yep.
But it hurts other industries. It doesn't matter. All you want is the promotion of the industry that you will help, not the American industries that you will harm.
Well, that's it. I mean, you want the political effect. You want the populist effect. You don't actually want the real effect, because eventually you're going to have to undo the tariff. In order to save that industry, inevitably, you're going to have to turn that around. And we saw it with the steel tariffs. We saw it with the Bush steel tariffs. We saw it with the Trump steel tariffs. Especially with steel, it happens quickly because the manufacturers look at it and say, we can't.
Yeah, getting, people saying that Yellen and others in the administration are saying, well, these are targeted. Doesn't matter whether that means nothing. Targeted simply means, this time targeted means we're targeting a significant portion on them on industries where the American taxpayer is keeping that industry alive.
Right.
Still,
it's all targeted.
Right.
There's the other thing, too, is that she's one of them that said inflation is transitory.
Yeah.
And
now we know it's suppository.
Exactly. This is not going to work in the favor of the consumer. It's going to impact negatively the economy, and there's no way around it. And as soon as those numbers show up and reality hits, you have to turn it around. There's just no way around that. Maybe somebody in the Biden administration is saying, look, I'll say this for Janet Yellen. On EVs, it is targeted in that very few people are buying them. So, all to that extent, who does it affect? Well, the majority, do they think that? By the way, one more thing for them to get out and protect the elite, right? Let's do away with their college loans. Let's give them money for their EVs, and also let's put a tariff on EVs from China. It's all done to help the rich, the wealthy, because who else is buying these cars? It's not the average American person.
And as was brought up, I forgot who brought it up yesterday, there is that if China wishes to sell gasoline vehicles and dump them in the United States, there are no tariffs.
Right.
So that would compete against the profitable arm of the American automobile industry.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
It's just like, but this is where everybody believes you can manipulate an economy to your political advantage.
And you can't.
No. Well, you can temporarily.
Well, until reality hits.
Right. So,
you can't do it and have a positive effect.
No, you'll never have tariffs will never help an economy. They will always hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if you raise the cost of doing business, it doesn't matter how you do it. It hurts a business. It doesn't help.
Yep.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I just love this here. The UN nearly halved its estimate of women and children killed in Gaza after relying on figures from Hamas. I mean, we're just idiots.
They're just now waking up.
We're just idiots.
Just now waking up to the fact that all of the propaganda out of Gaza comes from Hamas. But the media, the White House, I'm convinced, has Hamas writing their script. If you read where Biden is over and over again, it sounds just like it's right out of the Hamas playbook. And the media's been basically writing, well, this is what they tell us. Oh, we have to go back and redo the numbers. Why is it now that they don't trust Hamas? Would be my question. What changed? I'm really curious.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.